Hi everyone! So today we're going to be learning how to paint a realistic flower. It's really easy, a lot easier than you might think. So basically the first step is to first find the template of what you want your flower to be. So you can look at any type of reference or just think in your head any type of flower that you want to draw, and you want to draw the silhouette of it, so kind of like the outline of the shape. So that's what I've already done. So this is kind of the shape of the flower that I want. So I just rough sketched it using a pencil, and that's really important so that you can like reference based off of your canvas size and everything, and you know exactly how you want your flower to look like. And then you're going to need four different colors. One of them is optional, so I would say definitely three colors. So first is going to be kind of the base of the main color of your flower. So whatever type of color you want your flower to be, you're going to need that color. So today I'm going to be using red. And you're also going to need black and white. So the white obviously is going to be for those highlights, and the black is going to be for the shadows, and that's just going to help with the realisticness. And then the last color, which is optional, is any kind of accent color. So if you want to add like a little pop of colors to your flower, or you know, something like that, or if you were making like a background and you wanted to incorporate a color from the background into your flower to kind of make it all coherent, then that color would be there as well. So, and also in terms of the paint brushes that you're going to need, I would recommend getting any type of like rounded brush that would match the size of the flower you're making. So I have this brush, it's like kind of rounded, which is going to help kind of like blend everything together. And if you have more sharper edges, then I would also recommend having a straight edged brush. And I also recommend having a small detailed brush for any of those small little like accent, like lines and stuff that you want to make on the flower. So let's get started. So the first thing you're actually going to want to do is basically just paint your base color. So again, as I said, I'm using red. I'm just going to paint a layer of that red all throughout my flower. So basically you want to just go in with your base color and outline and fill up your entire flower. So usually I go kind of like petal by petal, but because of time's sake, I'm gonna just kind of do it all at once. But I would recommend going kind of petal by petal, so doing this step on just one petal, and then after you do all of the steps that I'm going to describe in this video onto just one petal, then you can move on to the next one. And I think that that just works a lot easier, but I'm just going to do this all at once. And of course you can kind of keep on like trying different techniques and seeing what works best for you. Maybe doing it all at once will work better for you, but for me personally, I like doing it petal by petal. So yeah, so again, I'm just using that base color. So again, I want like a pretty red flower, so whatever that main color of your flower is going to be, then you're going to use that. And even if you wanted to use like make it like a multicolored flower, whatever like the main color of one of those petals are going to be, you just want to put a light layer of that all throughout your petal. So anyways, after I have gotten all of that down, we're gonna kind of put in like the rough edges and the kind of like roughly place where we want our shadows to be. So again, if you're looking at a reference piece, then that can help you out, and you can kind of figure that out through there. But let me just move the camera a little bit because I feel like there's a little shadow. But anyways, it's a lot darker on camera, but basically we're now going to use black. So you're going to want to mix your black with your base color, so you just have like a darker shade of your base color. And you're gonna I'm using the same exact brush, it doesn't really matter, you can use a smaller brush if you want. And you're gonna kind of plan out where you want your shadows to be, or where the shadows are based off of your reference flower. So for me, it's kind of on like the edges of each petal, and then also a lot in the inside, because remember, like kind of like that deep inside of the flower looks a lot darker, and when petals kind of overlap, there's a lot of that shadow. So that's where I'm going to kind of do it. So again, it's really light, and I blended it with, mixed it with some of that general red so that it matches well and doesn't look too intense. And again, we can make it look more intense, but that'll be later. This is kind of just the first go. Again, I recommend doing it petal by petal. So after, you do this on just one of the petals, but for time's sake, I'm just going to do it on all of them. So again, I'm just kind of putting it wherever I see my shadows. You might have, a place differently, but this is how shadows usually look on a flower, where it's kind of like a lot of shadows in the very inside and usually on the outside of the petal, because of that overlap. And you can kind of like make some lines so that it kind of goes more forward inside, and do whatever you want. Again, I'm just gonna add some more, and let's just add some more. And again, I know it looks super rough right now, but don't worry, we're gonna keep on adding a bunch of more layers. So I want to add a little bit more darkness here and a lot more darkness in that very inside. So I'm just going to add some more of that light layer of that dark red. And now that I've gotten that, I'm going to go back in with my regular red, my plain red, and I'm going to kind of fill in the rest, so to kind of blend it all up. So I'm going in with like a kind of a second layer of that plain red to kind of blend out that darkness. So again, a super light layer of whatever your base color was, that first color that you used all throughout your flower. And I'm going to kind of put that on. And basically, throughout this entire painting, you're kind of just going like in between, like back and forth with a bunch of different colors. So you might go in with your base color, and then you might want more shadow, and then you might want more highlight, and then you might want more of that base color. And so you're gonna kind of going like back and forth in between a bunch of different colors. So anyways, I'm gonna fill up that last one. And now that I've done that, and I kind of brought back some of that really bright red, I'm going to add more highlights. So, not highlights, shadows. So I'm going to actually add more black than I would usually, just so that I have like a darker layer, but I'm still blending that with the red. And you want to work kind of fast, because it's better if you blend when your paint is still wet. It just makes it easier to blend. So I'm going to kind of go back into that inner corner and see how dark that is, but that's kind of how dark I want it to be. My flower is relatively dark, so that's why I'm adding a lot of darkness. But if you don't have too much shadows, then you can kind of skip over this. So you want to keep on doing it until you get enough shadows that you want. And you always want to, I recommend always doing shadows first before you do highlights, but you might like doing highlights before. And so once we get to the highlights, you can try it out with another flower and see what you like. And I like to go in streak motions, because if you kind of see flowers, if you look at a flower there, you can kind of see the streaks. So it kind of works out, because when you paint, you kind of make those streaks anyways. And again, I'm now going back in with that normal plain red to blend it out. And again, I like to go in a bunch of streaks, like back and forth in just a bunch of streaky motions, and that's going to help with the blending and also making it look really realistic, because as I said before, you do see these like streak-like motions in a normal flower in real life anyways. So and again, see, you guys you might be facing that problem that I'm facing right now, where you're making your flower a lot darker than you want it to be. And if that happens, then that's totally fine. When you add your highlights, it probably will bring it back as well. But you also want to be able to wait in between, like after you add all of your highlights and everything, then you want to wait for it to dry, so then afterwards you can kind of go back in and add kind of like restore some of that. So once it's dried, you can go back in with your plain base color to kind of make it brighter, and or you might want to go in with a highlighter, whatever you want, just to kind of make it all blend and look really cohesive. And I think that that's enough for now. Again, you can always go back and forth if you like, you might be going on, and then you might figure out that, oh, I want more highlights, or I want more shadows somewhere, or I want it to look more red, or whatever you want. But at this point, I'm gonna move on to the highlights. So for this part, I like to go in with the white, and you can mix it a little bit of your plain color so that you create like a lighter shade of that. And so I'm just gonna do that right now. I'm mixing some of my white and my plain red so you create a lighter shade this time. And again, you don't want it to be too light because you still want it to kind of blend out. And we're just adding some little lightness here and there. Again, usually for highlights, it works really well if you let it dry in between. So I recommend after you do all of your shadows and you blended all that out in that like streaky motion, then you can go in with this highlighting step. But again, for time's sake, I'm just going to go right in. That's fine. It'll still work out to an extent. And again, we're just kind of going in like a streaky motion. And again, certain areas might have more highlights than, other areas, and that's totally fine. I'm gonna go in with even more white to make it even brighter in certain areas. And sometimes you want to go in like a curvy motion. You kind of see like these lines that I'm making that are like kind of curvy. And that's because a lot of the times, like all of these flowers, they're kind of like curved. And it really depends on how your flower looks, but based off of how I want my flower to look, I want the petals to look kind of curvy. So I am going to make these little like curvy streaks going inwards. And we're almost done, guys. So again, as I was saying before, you're always going to want, keep on coming back and forth. And because like once you add your highlights, you might add too much highlights and you might want more shadows, and then you might want more highlights, and then you might want more of your base color. So I'm again going back in with my shadow of that black, and I'm going to blend that inwards. Again, I'm using curved motions now because I want it to look pretty curvy, and whatever you want. And as you guys can tell, I have been using the same brush. This brush is really nice. It's kind of like thin, but you might want to be going in with like different types of brushes. It really depends on how big your surface is. But again, you will figure that out on your own. I'm adding some more darkness to some petals that have a little bit more shadows than others, because not every single petal touch it like not the sun doesn't hit every single petal the same. So some areas are a lot lighter and some are a lot darker. So again, whatever you want to do. And a lot of the times I like to go in with more highlights at the very edge, at the very top of my petal. So I'm kind of adding some more of that really light red that I mixed using white and red. This doesn't have that many highlights, but so usually I recommend kind of going in those curved streaks at the very top of your petal and also at the very middle kind of area, because sometimes that's where the light hits the most as well. But again, whatever you guys want to do. And I'm going to go back in with my base color just to kind of add a little bit more of that normal base. And I'm just adding a little bit more of that shadow. I know, I cannot stop myself. You should know how to stop yourself. And after I do that, I'm gonna add my accent colors now. So I am using an accent of yellow. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna add some white, some plain white, a little bit of a plain white streak, because this is going to help kind of pop my color out more. But if you have a color, like an accent color that's darker than your base color, then you don't need to do this because it'll show up no matter what. But because my yellow is lighter than red, I'm going to need that white so that it's going to pop out a lot more. And again, this is just kind of for fun. It's like this is like kind of optional, but a lot of the times if you look at flowers, they tend to have different types of colors in them, so it is a good idea to kind of add some of that like pop in certain areas wherever you feel like it. And a lot of the times what people like to do is they like to add their accent color and incorporate that into their background so that, you know, you can kind of see that coherentness, and it's gonna make it look more like a real painting. And again, once it dries, I kind of want to add some more highlights. It really depends on, like, you know, whatever you as an artist would want. I like to add a lot of highlights at the very top of my petal, because that's just how I like to do flowers. But if you don't like that, then you don't have to. It really depends on what you want. So I'm kind of gonna add some more highlights at the very top, and again, I'm going to blend that out more. You're always kind of adding just a bunch of layers here and there so that, you know, it all looks very coherent and blended and all that good stuff. And if you are having like trouble kind of differentiating some of those petals, you might want to go back in with that black here and there to kind of add a little bit of that darkness to some of your like the edges so that you can differentiate between each petal. It's kind of like you're outlining them, but you want to make sure you blend that out really well so that it's not like streaky. No, not streaky, but like, you know what I'm talking about. You guys already know. And the very last thing I'm going to do, again, this is really optional, but if you wanted to add something in the center, a lot of flowers have like some things in the center of your flowers. So I'm going to add little like those like buds, like those like little like dots type things. I don't know what they're called, but any of my science people would know what they're called. So I'm going in with a small detailed brush, and I like to pick up white and yellow because that's my accent color, and that's usually what like the inside of buds tend to look. And I'm adding a little bit of red, so I'm kind of picking that all up, and I'm kind of gonna go in a little like dotting motion at the very inside of my thing. And you can really do whatever you want, like, you know, be imperfect, because that's kind of how flowers look like because it's in nature. Maybe I want to add some more, whatever you guys want. You can even add like those like long little things, like, you know what I'm talking about, like those long like bud things that go in the inside of flowers. Whatever you feel like. And that's basically it. You know, if I had more time once it dried, I probably would go in with some more highlights and maybe more yellow just to kind of brighten it all up. But that's essentially how you create your flower. And at the very end, I actually recommend doing your background first and then do your flower, and then at the very end you can kind of go back in with your background color just to kind of fix up anything that you might have went over with. And yeah, so that's how you make a flower, a realistic flower, and I hope you enjoyed it. So just to recap, again, you want to make sure you draw that like reference of the general shape of what you want your flower to be, and then you're going to need your base color, black and white, for your shadows and highlights, and then maybe an accent color or 2 or 3 or 4, and you know, you might need a detailed brush. I really recommend a rounded brush, and you always want to go in like curved, streaky motions, and always like kind of go back and forth with a bunch of colors to kind of overlap and get that right balance. And yeah, be creative, and I'm so excited to see you guys do this painting, and I hope you guys have a good day. Bye!